Hello! What's been happening? From the studio in Nitro, West Virginia, this is Unreasonable Doubt. It's a podcast about West Virginia University basketball. I'm Josh Witt. What have y'all been up to? Haven't heard from anybody, so I guess we're all good with me not talking into a microphone. I know I was good with not talking into the microphone. Listen, I'm approaching 7 years of doing this hobby, starting it on an iPhone SE in my basement pantry in 2017. And this is the longest break I've taken from the podcast. Why? I don't know. Short answer, WVU basketball-wise, for all of the changes, including new coach and offering excluded, whole new roster, that's all exciting. But as far as having takes on that or history, I don't have any history with anybody. And not that I rely on that in the off season, but it just limits the takes that you have, the takes that I have, because I don't know. Like I always don't know. But with all this newness, I know even less. So to talk into a microphone, that's a quick podcast saying I don't know. Don't have a ton of takes yet. I do have a few. And the few takes I have so far with WVU basketball under Darren DeVries is we've got an Ed on the team, which is awesome. I thought it was Eduardo Andre, and they've been in Italy and providing updates on social media and a scoring breakdown. It wasn't how many points Eduardo had, it's how many points Ed has. And I just like having an Ed on the team. I'm excited for that. So, and Ed stands out, number one, because his name is Ed, and he will be referred to as Ed moving forward. And he's the only center on the team, like the only true center. So, double bonus for Ed. I love an Ed. Speaking of names, we've got an Amani Hansberry, who's the other guy who's going to play at the 5 or the big. And I'm going to call him Amari. It's just one letter difference, and yet I don't have Amani in my head for a basketball name. I only think of Amari Stoudemire. And that's unfair to Amani. And I hope to say Amani every time I'm thinking about Amani Hansberry. But I fear, and I'm trying to get ahead of it, that I'm going to call Amani Amari. And I'm either going to correct myself, or what I'm scared of is that I'm going to call him Amari and not notice that I'm not getting the name right. And I'm just going to keep moving. So awesome Ed, awesome Amani, but I'm going to call him Amari. And then how many Sinceres do you know? I know two. They both play college basketball. One is Sincere Harris, who plays for the Mountaineers, came over from Illinois. And the other is Sincere Carey. And I think he played at Duquesne. I don't know where he's at now. But it's the first Sincere I knew was Sincere Carey. So same in the fear column. I'm going to mistake Sincere Harris for Sincere Carey. I only know two Sinceres, so it makes it even more rough that I'm going to confuse the two. I'm just trying to get ahead of mistakes. Was it a mistake to get back on the microphone? We're going to find out together. The other take I have is that this whole roster, it's all new. Even with Offrey returning, he's the only one returning. He came over from Israel. So it's brand new for him. And he's been there a year. 2% more chemistry is going to be gained with this roster. Why? Because everyone on the roster has jersey numbers between 0 and 14. It's like a symbolic chemistry where we are going to be close simply by the numbers that we wear on our back and the front. If everyone just chose any number that they wanted between 0 and 99 or even a 00, 2% less chemistry. And that's science. That's chemistry. That's how that works. They can add more chemistry. with just jerseys if they forego putting their last names on the back of the jersey. If they do that, I don't want to put a percentage on that. I haven't researched it. It's 2% with the 0 through 14 thing. If they forego the last name on the back, that can only increase chemistry. Or sometimes teams will have like the school name where your last name would be. You just put the school name or something else. That's another chemistry builder. And when it's all brand new, you got to have the chemistry. You've got to like double time the chemistry. You don't build it over 4 years. You got to build it in a summer and a fall. So the window is tighter. How do you build chemistry without having to like talk to each other or play together? You get numbers close together or the other options. So I feel good about those takes. And I wouldn't even put those as no. Like I know these things. These are just the takes I have so far. You may be asking, and I'm probably asking myself this more than you're asking, why podcast now? I mean, it's the off season. It's not football long off season, but it's long. From March until, we're still over 2 months away from this recording until the opening exhibition versus James Long's University of Charleston. WVU connection there, obviously. More than 2 months ago there. Why podcast now? Well, I got to tell you, there was a recent basketball performance across the pond that you just couldn't ignore it. And it got me so excited. It made me like, all right, I need to check in on the podcast because of hearing about this basketball that was played by this certain guy. And this guy, you know him. He's one of the best. He made a bunch of threes in his last performance in the summer. He led his team in scoring. He came through in the final game of a trip where his team went undefeated in their trip overseas. It's a performance you and I will never forget. And of course, I'm talking about Tucker DeVries, 26 points, versus Stella #EBK in WVU's 107-53 win. We're still talking about it. I know I'm still thinking about it and talking about it to complete the Mountaineers' 3-0 undefeated run in their summer trip to Italy. We saw Tucker in a sling when Darren DeVries was being introduced as WVU's head coach a few months ago, and now he's good enough health-wise to score 26 against Stella #EBK in the city of Rome. What an amazing opportunity to, basketball or not, to go to Italy. I saw a video of them making pasta. I saw some videos of them playing basketball. I mean, what an amazing opportunity. This could have happened last season. It would have been awesome for the guys who would have been available to take that trip. They canceled it. I don't like that those guys missed out just from a human perspective of getting to go on an overseas trip. Selfishly, glad that this new team, new coach, chemistry. It's all about chemistry, and a great tool for chemistry is road trip. Bonds are formed. You get on and off the court, great things happening, extra practices, all chemistry stuff. So those teams that WVU played, who knows how good they were, doesn't matter. It's guys. You're stuck in a plane with these guys. You're stuck in hotels, and you're playing against guys that are not on your team. So that's always good. All that stuff is great. It came at a perfect time for this program, and so all that's good stuff. So that's why I'm in front of the microphone. And so, what's happened in the last 3 months? I actually, because the last podcast I did, I said we're going to go every couple of weeks. Obviously, that didn't happen. But I put some notes together in June for a podcast that I did record. So I thought it'd be interesting to look at those notes from June, read them, and then provide any updates since. And I start with the tragic one, which is the death of Jerry West, which was super sad. I grew up in the eastern end of Kanawha County. Across the river, my school's rival was East Bank High School. My father went to East Bank High School, but it didn't matter where you live. If you grew up in West Virginia, basketball and Jerry West was like one. Jerry West is basketball in this state. And what's wild is that some could argue Jerry West is basketball globally. I can't think of a more if you just looked at the basketball part, all of the outpouring that came out for Jerry West after his passing, it was all praise. And that's rare. But the guy was beloved by basketball people, and I'm sure outside of basketball. But he's beloved in this state. He's beloved by his peers. He's the logo of the NBA. He didn't like that he was the logo, but it was fitting. After he played basketball, he coached. He was, I would argue, the most successful GM, one of the most successful general managers and basketball operations people that's ever done it. And the only guy that had a bad thing to say about Jerry West is Adam McKay, who did that show and painted him in a way that Jerry West, I don't know the story. I think he sued about like defamation of character. What a terrible loss for the state. He will sorely be missed. How to remember him in this upcoming season, because that's something that you do. Typically you'll have like a patch on the jersey. You could just go with the 44. You could even put like the NBA logo. It'd be weird because WVU doesn't play in the NBA, but that would be a nice tribute. What if everybody put the name West on the back of the jersey? No bad ideas, but this will be a season in remembrance of the greatest WVU Mountaineer basketball player, one of the greatest basketball players, period, of all time, and just loved by the state, loved by his family, and just an ambassador for West Virginia, an ambassador for the game. So this is months later. It doesn't change the fact how sad it was, and that Jerry West will be missed. So that was my first note. The next note was, I don't know how you transition from that gracefully. My bullet point 2 scholarships still available. That was in June, and we're in August, and that's still the case. I mean, fall semester starts in less than 2 weeks, still 2 scholarships available. But I've got hope. We're in a tight window here, and the coach has said that they're still looking. When you go back to the jersey numbers, they're 0 through 14. Number 6 is open. So I think they'll at least get one scholarship filled because somebody's got to be number 6. And I'm inferring here that number 6 was held out in some kind of ode or respect to LeBron James, or, they want somebody to have number 6. Maybe they've had somebody in mind all along, and that's like the bait. Like, if you come here, you can be number 6. It's like, we're not going to bring somebody in and they're going to be number 38. You got, for continuity, if they care about chemistry, if you do the thing where you go, all the numbers are close together, you could either be number 14 and still leave number 6 open. I would say if somebody comes in and takes a number 14, we're leaving a little bit of chemistry on the table because somebody isn't wearing number 6. So somebody's wearing number 6 and they're going to be on scholarship. That's an opinion. And then I think Football Aiden, who got a number, I think he's number 4. Is Football Aiden going to be on the roster? I mean, we've got a handful of guards who are walk-ons already. Aiden's scholarship is in football. I'd be surprised that he's on the roster during the season. And so then, if it can't affect chemistry if number 4 is assigned and then he ends up not playing. But if there's 2 scholarships available and one has to take number 6 because obviously, then maybe number 4. Or what you do is then you have number 14, Aiden's still on the roster. They get a second scholarship guy. He wears number 14, and then you just cover up the 1 if Aiden's not on the team. And you could do that. It's 2024. And by covering the 1, you're building chemistry. The other note I had, 2 assistant coaches could still be added. That's how long it's been since I've recorded. And they added the 2 assistant coaches. And the good news is that both were with DeVries at Drake. Tom Ostrom, he joins the Mountaineers after having a cup of coffee at Vanderbilt in between Drake and WVU. That's probably a good story to tell about how that transpired. I'm sure there's a story there. And then the other coach is Cavell Witter, and he played at Creighton when DeVries was an assistant coach there. So DeVries ends up bringing 3 assistants from Drake. He adds Chester Frazier from Illinois and Corey Barnett from Nevada. And so you have 5 coaches that I don't know if you've heard of any of them before they came to WVU. I know I have not. And you know what those guys are doing? You know what they're building? Chemistry. They're building chemistry. And they're building chemistry as a coaching staff, separate from the players. There's also some chemistry happening between the players and the coaches. There's just so much chemistry happening. I mean, you just want to break out a Bunsen burner and a Erlenmeyer flask and crack open your periodic table. You know why? Because it's just everywhere you look, chemistry. And you're building it. When I took chemistry as a high school student, we tried to build chemistry within our chemistry class with our chemistry teacher, and we did that by calling him Coach. So he was Coach. Our chemistry teacher did not like being called Coach. So that was a bit. And I was young, but I wouldn't take it back because I enjoyed thinking about calling my chemistry teacher Coach at the time. What other notes did I have in June? Bullet point, added the leading scorer from a 1-31 Detroit Mercy team that had a 1-person court storm for their sole win. That leading scorer from Detroit Mercy, his name is Jaden Stone. That did happen. They won against Ooey Pooey, and one guy briefly ran on the court and then ran off the court. And that was the Detroit Mercy peak. What is a one-guy court storm? But Jaden Stone, he's good. Like, he started 2 of the 3 Italy games. He played his first 2 seasons at Grand Canyon, transferred to Detroit Mercy. Would he do that again? I don't know. I mean, he got to play for Mike Davis, who longtime college coach, took an Indiana team to the national championship game a while back. When Jaden was at Detroit Mercy lost 50 games in 2 seasons. So that's not great. So when you hear that, it makes you think Malik Curry. It makes you think Noah Farrakhan. Talented players on bad teams. And those guys came over with, I would argue, mixed success. We'll see how Jaden Stone fits in, what's his chemistry like, you know what I mean, with the team. Only 13 other guys in Division I basketball took a higher percentage of shots for their team than Jaden did last season. So he shot a bunch for a 1-31 team. He will not do that this upcoming season. His usage rate is going to drop considerably because of Tucker DeVries. But if we're reading anything into the Italy trip, Jayden Stone was worthy of 2 starts, not 3 starts. And so we welcome Jayden to the team. Next bullet point was about Best Virginia, getting the band back together for 2024 TBT, and they absolutely did that. Definitely a transition year. Mentioned that University of Charleston has the former Best Virginia coach, Chase Harler, took the reins from James Long. He was the head coach. He was also the GM. They got a handful of new players, including alums Taz Sherman, Issa Ahmad, Wesley Harris, Sagaba Kanate, who was on a previous Best Virginia roster, but did not play. They got TBT legend Marcus Keene to join the roster, which was awesome. And Best Virginia won their first game and lost their second game to the Pitt alumni team. The games were a little tougher to catch this year. They were on thetournament.com, and you had to have a username and password, so you had to sign up for thetournament.com. And then it wasn't on ESPN Plus. They moved over to Fox. I don't know how well Fox marketed TBT. So my understanding is that it was a very small turnout of Best Virginia supporters in Pittsburgh. I don't know how well the games were watched, moving from ESPN Plus to signing up for the tournament.com and one camera. They did have play-by-play and color commentary, but it was just the middle camera going back and forth. I don't know. I don't even remember I don't think there was any replays. So kind of a bare bones production by the tournament.com. What does it look like for Best Virginia 2025? I think it's going to happen. I'm selfishly hopeful that they find their way back to Charleston, West Virginia. And again, the key word there is selfishly, because it's 20 minutes from my house instead of 3.5 hours to Pittsburgh. And then my last note was about Joe Mazzulla. He's an NBA champion head coach. He coached 4 seasons of basketball. He's coached 4 seasons of basketball as a head coach. So he hasn't even filled up a hand of head coaching experience, number of seasons. 2 of those seasons was with Division II Fairmont State, and 2 of those seasons with the Boston Celtics. Those are his 4 seasons. 2 Fairmont State, 2 Boston Celtics. Who's got a comparable story to Joe Mazzulla? He was on the Final Four roster in 2010. He was credited with convincing Bob Huggins to break out the 1-3-1 that confused Kentucky to get to the Final Four. He took over the second half of that Kentucky game to get the Mountaineers to the Final Four. After his college career, he went to Glenville State as an assistant coach, moved to Fairmont State for a few seasons. Then he spends a season for the Celtics G League affiliate, comes back to West Virginia to coach Fairmont State as the head coach for 2 successful seasons, got the call from Brad Stevens to be an assistant coach for the Boston Celtics, interviews with the Jazz for their head coaching job and doesn't get it. And then a few months later, Udoka, who had a great first season as a head coach, got suspended and ultimately fired. You can Google that. And Joe Mazzulla gets asked to be the interim head coach. Does a good job, gets the interim tag removed, loses to Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals, was down 3-0, tied the series and lost Game 7. And for sure, if Miami would have won that Eastern Conference Final, or if they would have swept, if they would have won Game 4 Miami, Joe Mazzulla might have had 3 head coaching seasons. I mean, the talk was that of like, not only do you lose as a 1 seed, but you get swept in the Eastern Conference Finals. Somebody gets the blame for that. And that typically is not the players. And so he goes from that to winning 3 games, losing Game 7, keeps the job, and then the next season they get Porzingis, they bring in Drew Holiday, and They win the NBA championship. That was all of my bullet point. So nothing to add here except all that's true, and they're going to bring everybody back next season to try and repeat. And 3 of the Celtics were on the Olympic roster. Jaylen Brown wasn't one of the 3. That's what they have coming back. And so repeating is really hard. But the Celtics are still relatively young. Their leaders are still in their prime. And Jaylen Brown's got an Olympic axe to grind because he didn't make the team. And Jason Tatum has an Olympic axe to grind because Steve Kerr hit Jason Tatum, who was on the NBA champion Boston Celtics. Steve Kerr hit him with 2 DMP coaches' decisions in their 6 games in Paris. So that's fuel for the fire. That's the motivation you need after winning a championship. So all signs point to the Boston Celtics having a strong chance being there at the end next season. And so then you have Joe Mazzulla, by my count. I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but that's 5 seasons of coaching coaching basketball as a head coach. 2 with Fairmont State, 3 with the Boston Celtics, and 2 NBA championships. It's possible. And that would be amazing. And I would love that. That's all I have for my June bullet points. Is there anything that I'm missing of what's happened in the last 2 months? Having not heard anything, I think we're all caught up. That's it for this episode of Unreasonable Doubt. I'll be back again, and I can't tell you when. Could be a couple of weeks. It could be next month. I'll be back in front of the microphone in the off season as we gear up to the regular season, the 2024-2025 WVU men's basketball season. Listen on all the platforms. Go to smokingmusket.com. Until then, I'm Josh Witt. WVU for the 2024-2025 season, they have 0 wins and they have 0 losses.